If you just take a step back and you say, hey, I've got 50 salespeople at my company, 100, 1,000, 10. Do they all know exactly what they need to know from a sales play perspective at the moment of action? And what we're doing is sort of saying, how do you measure the effectiveness? Just how good is the sales play? Is it working? And today, if you're a CMO or a head of sales, it's kind of tough. And then how do you know if that sales play is landing consistently across all those salespeople?
Welcome to the Modern Selling Podcast, where we help the entire sales community to create more sales conversations with today's modern buyer. This includes anyone from entrepreneurs and business owners to sales reps and sales leaders. Each episode, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, connect, and nurture your relationships with your buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., your host, and you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Gong.io, the #1 conversion intelligence platform for sales. Gong helps you achieve revenue success, which means you win more deals, skyrocket rep performance, and gain critical market intelligence. Get powerful visibility into your customer conversations with Gong. Head over to Gong.io to get started. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited. I cannot believe I've got these two fantastic gentlemen. Actually, two. You heard it right. Not just one, but two. I got two guests for you today. And that is from our good friends and partners, Highspot. I get the privilege of introducing to you Mr. Jon Perera, the CMO of Highspot, and Matt Weil, the Vice President of Worldwide Sales. And we are going to be having a great conversation talking about the infamous no decision. Oh, it pains me, the no decision. Jon, Matt, welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us. So excited to be here.
Yeah, this is terrific. We are really looking forward to this.
Fantastic. I know you guys have heard the podcast here before. We've got sales leaders, we've got sales reps, we've got sales enablement folks, we've got marketing folks that listen in. And everybody knows that I always ask some really funny questions here at the beginning. But first, before I get into tell us something nobody knows about you, even if they looked at your social profile, just give us a little background. Matt, let's take with you first. Give us a little background about yourself, where you've come from. I obviously mentioned you're at Highspot, one of our solutions partners for sales enablement. So talk about you, and then Jon, your background.
So one thing that people wouldn't know off my LinkedIn that it doesn't tell you anything about, I'm a diehard Cleveland sports fan. So go Browns, go Indians, go Cavs. And I live in California, commute up to Seattle to be a part of the great Highspot experience. And been doing it for about 2 years there. And this is what I do for a living as I travel.
I love it. So Jon, Matt gave something, being a diehard. You said Cleveland Cavaliers, Browns?
All of the above.
Cleveland anything. Diehard fan. I'm looking for something juicy, Jon. Something nobody would know. I mean, I've had everything. That was very basic, Matt. I got to tell you, it was very basic. The audience is listening. They're like, oh, man, come on. So let me tell you, Jon, we've had everything from, I got 2 kids to an extra appendage. So, I'll let you figure out what it is that you want to talk about. But give me something juicy and a little background about yourself.
Yeah, this is Jon, Chief Marketing Officer for Highspot, grew up in Seattle. I'll give you 2 things. First of all, I went to the 1978-79 Sonics World Championship, the first and only time that Seattle had an NBA team that won. So I went to one of those finals games in the Kingdome here in Seattle. Number 2, I am a failed winemaker. Tried it for 3 years, not very good at it, and now I've just moved on to just appreciating it.
Ah, that's a good one. So you're appreciating it and, of course, enjoy it and with I'm sure, your family and all that good stuff. But tell me about your fail. It failed because business-wise? Was it more like, you couldn't get the winemaking right? What was the issue?
It turns out that winemaking is really about chemistry. I got a C- my freshman year of high school in chemistry, and so I was really setting myself up for failure on that one. I was what's called a garagiste, which means it's kind of like making beer in the backyard or with a few buddies. I did up a few notches from there, tried for 3 years. And ultimately, my tagline for my wine was, it's not that bad.
And do you still have any of your old wine that you made? Or did you drink it all and you're done with that?
I've got one bottle left, and I'm just waiting for the right occasion. It's a 2007 Cabernet Sauvignon.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, I was going to say, well, maybe next time you're in the city, you can bring down the wine and I'll taste it and tell you if it's really that bad. But if you only got one bottle left, keep that to yourself. Enjoy it for a special occasion. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you spending so much time here on this particular podcast. And like I said, we've got folks from sales leadership through sales enablement, marketing, listening in. And in the pregame that we were spending some time talking, I mentioned to you about this concept of no decision being made by many of our own individual prospects and buyers. And it's a huge problem that we see happening. And throughout my 22 years of sales leadership and sales experience, I haven't had a year go by where I wasn't faced with this concept of no decision being made. And it's interesting that we have both the VP of Worldwide Sales and the CMO on this particular podcast to talk about why is no decision such a challenge for modern businesses? And why don't we start with you, Matt, and Jon, if you can add something, that'd be awesome. I
think it's a couple of things, and we deal with it every day. That it's a mindset. Eventually, this person, this company, whoever you're talking with, they will do something. You just have to have that mindset that I am going to overcome this concept of no decision and make them make a decision. The other part is, I think that, especially with the sales that I'm currently in at Highspot or in other companies, if it's a longer sales cycle, is educating the buyer. I'm not trying to sell you something today. I may have to educate you, and over time, you're going to make a decision. You don't need to make one today. And this is going to be a journey we're both on. And so I think a lot of salespeople make the mistake that they think they have to sell something in that given moment. They're not trying to play the long game. And that over time, they're going to educate them on wanting to buy something.
Anytime that you're growing a new business, by default, you're sort of introducing something brand new to the market, something where there's no budget line item. You know, if you look at CSO Insights, they just issued a new report around sales enablement. Something like 22% of all deals in the B2B space are lost to closed, no decision. So the revenue growth impact is absolutely staggering. And I think to Matt's point, we're on a journey to help the buyer understand why buy anything? And more importantly, why buy now? And then, of course, why buy from us? And so I think what we'll roll with is how sales and marketing can partner together to really help unlock that buyer who's doing nothing.
And you kind of teed up a really good segue into what can sales and marketing do. But before you go into that, 22% of all deals are closed as a result of no decision. And that's a pretty staggering number. And I actually think it's higher. I really do. I think it's much higher. But I think it's systemic from what salespeople are trying to do in terms of capture who they're talking to and that they're actually working on something and trying to move the ball down the field. And so therefore they put an opportunity in and now they're tracking against it, even if it's at the super low probability stage versus not having an opportunity. So it's almost like if there was a way to have a pre-opportunity into your into your CRM, right? Like it's not an opportunity yet, but I am working on a deal that may result in a close. And I just don't think our CRM systems have resulted in enabling sellers to have this quote pre-opportunity phase, or when we enter it in that as sales leaders, which Matt, you're looking at the pipeline and you're sitting and looking at what the crap? Why do we have $50 million sitting inside of the appointment scheduled phase? How come we can't move that forward into the next phase? And therefore, it continues to exasperate this no decision, because after it, whatever the time period is, a year, you're like, clear it out. If it's not going to close this year, clear it out. And that's what happens with sales leadership, creating this no decision. And I'm not talking about you specifically because I did the exact same thing in my own business. Like, get this stuff out of my pipeline. I do not want to see it, right? So what do we do about that? And how do we solve that problem? And maybe really this question around sales and marketing alignment play a role in combating this no decision, either on the front end or maybe address it from the back end, which is what I'm talking about, more on the back end.
Yeah, you got to be really disciplined with your stages because you're right. CRM is not helping us with this. So you have to be really disciplined knowing how many stages you have. Is it 4, 5, 6? And really knowing actions on recycling stuff. Don't let it just sit there and chase rainbows. And hopefully in 18 months, we're going to have something. Be disciplined knowing the little wins that you need to have to make sure that's something that should be in the funnel. So it doesn't get to be a year having the same one-on-one meetings with your frontline salesperson, knowing what's going on with the Acme account. It's been in there for 365 days and the same activities going on. You got to be really disciplined on why something should be in the funnel and how can it progress and why does it need to be there longer than 30, 60, 90 days, depending on how long your sales cycle. If you're not disciplined about that, you're going to have a lot of conversations like the one that you just described.
And I think, building on that, Matt, where you think about how sales and marketing can partner together. In the old world, a marketer would go out, have an event, do a webinar, get a lead, score it, becomes an MQL, then we hand it off to the sales team and say, have at you, go have fun with this thing. And if you're in an environment where close no decision is a big issue, it's imperative for marketing to do some work up front for the seller to really warm the prospect up that why now is an imperative. And I'll give you sort of three tactical examples. One is just top of funnel or account-based marketing. Are we warming the prospect up ahead of time that there's an imperative? There is a need for change. That could be thought leadership content or stuff that we, maybe license from an analyst firm and share with prospects, et cetera. Two, marketing typically does a lot of buyer interviews. And so, when we lose a deal or win a deal or even lost to no decision, we'll call that prospect up and with sort of an independent voice say, hey, why not? What'd you learn from that? And we get a lot of really good insights that then we can, hand off to our own internal enablement team so that our sales plays around no decision are constantly being informed and learning from every single deal that's no decision. We do a postmortem on that in an actual survey. And we can translate that back in helping our sellers be more effective.
And let me add to that. One thing that Jon and I have done over the last year is we have become such close partners and we understand each other's strategic goals. We are aligned completely. I've never worked with another CMO where I have aligned as closely with Jon in our goals as he is in mine. And in prior lives, the goals, they've just been flowed. And I didn't see my CMO for a month. And we're all of a sudden in a meeting and his goals, I'm like, I didn't realize that's one of your priorities. That actually was mine 2 months ago. Jon and I communicate on a daily basis. We've already had 2 calls today, and I'm doing this podcast, and we know exactly what our goals are.
We talk about this alignment and you guys talking to each other every day and understanding each other's goals. Net that out for me. Other CMOs, other heads of sales are listening in. They're like, yeah, you're right. My CMO, he or she, we're simply not aligned. Like I don't talk to them. I don't see them. Or if I do understand what it is that they may be doing, it's not really what my focus is. And the CMO, vice versa. It's like I'm handing off these leads and the sales folks aren't doing whatever it is that they're not doing. Things aren't converting. So tell me more of a tactical perspective. When you say that you're talking to each other once a day, twice a day, or even, several times per week and you understand each other's goals, what does that mean? Like net that out for me.
Yeah, I'll take this one first and then you can build on it and make it even better because, you're a sales guy. But maybe one of the most important things is around having aligned metrics. Marketers tend to look at the world in terms of this is the number of MQLs or the number of leads that I need to generate this year. Sales is thinking about the deals I have to close this quarter. Marketing is talking one to many, to hundreds or thousands of people in the marketplace. Sellers are speaking to one account, or maybe they own a patch of 30 or 40 deals they're trying to work through. And so netting out and aligning on the metrics to me is one of the most important things. I know exactly how many MQLs that convert into SQLs that then lead to opportunity for Matt. And I dissect it all the way back to what am I going to do on my website? What's the demand gen and the account-based marketing that we're going to do to generate that exact number? And if you don't work it back from the sales quota, then marketers are missing it, and we're not going to deliver on what the sellers need. I'd say one other thought is around just empathy. I have to be on the call with really tough discussions with sellers so that the marketing content that we create is better and it speaks more to the point. And I see a lot of marketing teams that are frankly 2 or 3 steps removed from being on the front line with prospects that are asking really tough questions around why should I do anything at all? Or why not go with your competitor? So those are 2 thoughts.
And a couple of things that I'm going to give Jon big kudos here because there's 2 things that Jon has done to really prove that alignment between our departments. One, he actually has a quota that he's put on everybody in his team to participate or listen to a Gong call so that they know exactly what our customers are going through. In my prior lives, our marketers had great ideas. I don't know where they got them though, because they weren't listening to what our customers were saying. They were just doing it in a vacuum. The other thing that Jon can do, and actually I know his team can do, they can literally walk through exactly what we need to do to hit our revenue goals. They know where that revenue is coming from. He can backdoor his way to it. And typically, marketers can only do that on the whole scheme of, yeah, I know what the quarterly number is. Jon can actually do it by segment. He knows exactly what the segment of each of my teams is doing. He's aligned with it. His marketers are aligned to it. So we are truly partners on achieving these goals.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned, Matt, about listening to Gong calls. And for those of you listening in, I don't know if you understood what the Gong call was, but if you know Gong, gong.io, they're a conversational intelligence tool of which we use as well here at Vengreso. And funny as it may be, that was totally unscripted. They're actually a sponsor for this particular podcast. But one of the things that happened recently is our CMO, Bernie Borges, who you guys know, he became a Gong addict. Like literally he binges on Gong calls instead of listening to podcasts now. So, you know, at nighttime, he's listening to us, like he is totally consuming this information. And since then, we've had some really amazing insights and discoveries that came out of that. Namely, every salesperson from the CSO down and even the CEO, i.e. myself, are saying something totally different. No one's following the plays. No one's following the scripts, right? So we said, okay, we need to fix and put together a pitch deck program. But the pitch deck is not just around one call. It's around the series of 4 calls that a seller would have to walk through the process all the way down to the pricing. And that's now resulted in creating this type of pitch deck that we're actually developing to create standardization. Then he also heard on these calls that we were missing content for specific verticals. So now he started to think about, oh, shoot, I actually have to have my team start producing content for a specific vertical. And thus we launched some verticals to the insurance vertical as an example. So is that the type of thing that when we talk about marketing and sales alignment, that our marketing organizations should be doing to help the sellers? Is that the type of thing?
Yes. The short answer is yes. It's the marketers need to be able to not just build the assets and make them beautiful, but they have to give the sales team with their enablement team the guidance on knowing what to know, say, and show. So that's what they have to do. If they're not all saying the right things, and you know your CMO's listening and he's hearing 10 different sales reps describe the same product 10 different times, different ways, it's probably the content would have been great, but there was no guidance around what you're supposed to do with it. And so that's what we do with our Gong calls. That's what our marketers are doing with our Gong calls is they're listening to it going, okay, we know that we built the assets. We now need to be better at just delivering these assets, giving them the capability of knowing what to know, say, and show.
Yeah, and that, by the way, is just one of these ways in which technology can and should play a really disruptive role in helping drive buying behavior consistency and seller effectiveness. And so, if you just take a step back and you say, hey, I've got 50 salespeople at my company, 100, 1,000, 10. Do they all know exactly what they need to know from a sales play perspective at the moment of action? And what we're doing is sort of saying, how do you measure the effectiveness? Just how good is the sales play? Is it working? And today, if you're a CMO or a head of sales, it's kind of tough. And then how do you know if that sales play is landing consistently across all those salespeople? And how do they establish themselves as a trusted advisor to the prospect that they're working with? Well, we think technology can and should play like one of the 3 legs of the stool here. You have to have a system that helps sales managers and marketing leaders connect and know, is the play working? Can we track and measure its success all the way down to the individual rep to make sure they're saying the right things at the moment of action? That's where AI comes in. That's what we're doing here at Highspot. It can and should be totally disruptive.
And I'll give you one further piece of supporting evidence to that. It's actually gone down to where now our CMO is listening to these calls. And we had one conversation with our chief sales officer. He said, I listened to this call with rep A, with customer B. And at the end, customer says, okay, this makes a lot of sense. And the rep said, okay, well, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much. And he was like, where was the close? Like you didn't go for the close. So now we had a deal that went dormant because we didn't go for the close. Like, okay, are you ready to sign? Do you want a contract? Do you want to get your credit card out now and buy? Like, okay, this all makes sense. And
how many of these no decisions, the 22%, is reps not asking the right question to cause the person to create a decision? So giving Gong a lot of kudos here is that we actually, because we have a long sales cycle, we will actually do keyword search for, are you using the word next step in your call? Because if you're not, you are clearly not closing for another step. You know, if you have a product that has a lot of features, a sales rep can feel really, really good about a phone call, having a conversation with somebody saying, hey, I just showed you all my features. Did you like it? Sure, I did. Perfect. Okay, I guess I'll talk to you whenever. They're not, great, let's have clear next steps. What am I talking to you? Who am I talking with? You know, close doesn't mean a signed contract. A close is just, are you getting something next out of them? Because in a long sales cycle, you're not going to get a contract in the first call. And in a short sales cycle, you may not get in the first one. It could be the second one. But you always have to get that next step.
Funny you mention that, because going back to the marketing team being involved in the day-to-day operations to deal with this no decision. As I mentioned earlier, this no decision has plagued our business. It's Vengreso, right? And I hate to say it, but almost 70% of my meetings are spent convincing sales leaders of this thing called the internet, right? That they need to actually do digital prospecting, something other than pick up the phone and email, right? There's something more, video, social, text, a direct mail, I don't care, something else, right? That you need to create that omni-channel. And so what we did was very simple change. We added on to our pitch deck on each call that we have, marketing added on, here are the 3 or 4 questions that need to be asked to move to the next step. And the final one says next steps, ? And we're actually showing that to the customer so that the customer is like moving to the next step so that we can move this thing along. And I think that's a really great example of what you're talking about in terms of how you guys work together as a marketing team and sales team. And the live example that I'm giving is where marketing is listening in and making changes to help enable the sales team. But there are definitely factors which make this difficult to achieve. But before you answer that question, Jon, we're going to take this quick break and listen to this message from our program sponsor. Opinions in sales are your worst enemy. Here's why. Your business has million-dollar questions that if you could answer with facts, you'd have an unfair advantage. Those questions are, what really separates your best reps from the rest? Why does half of your pipeline slip? And what's the best message to go to market with? If your answers were facts instead of opinions, you'd win the unfair share of your market. It turns out the truth is buried right underneath your nose. It's found in the customer conversations your team has every day. Introducing Gong.io. Gain powerful visibility into your customer conversations. With Gong, you'll win more deals, skyrocket rep success, and gain critical market intelligence that will help you achieve revenue success and win the lion's share of the wealth. Go to gong.io/demo to get started today. All right, Jon, I asked you a question right before that program sponsor break, and it was around what factors make alignment difficult to achieve what it is that we just talked about. So take it away.
One mistake that we've seen some companies make is mistaking awareness of the respective goals for sales and marketing for alignment. Just because a marketing organization knows and understands what the revenue targets are, doesn't mean that every single day for demand generation, awareness, campaigns you might be doing across digital channels, you have to wake up every morning and say, and how does that help the sellers drive demand? And how does that help them move their buyers through different stages? And so you have to dissect that at a really granular level. I'd say another factor is most companies don't have a sales enablement platform that allows marketing and sales teams to connect at every stage along the journey with the right content, the right information, what you need to know, what the sellers say, and what are those next steps to help the buyer move on this journey with us. And so you'd be surprised at how many companies don't have a a modern sales enablement platform in place. They're relying on, hard drives and cloud drives and laptops for all this critical information. But if you can unlock that, you can make a massive impact on close no decision.
I would also add to that I talk to, 1,000 CMOs plus a year, and I am shocked at how many actually aren't thinking about frontline salespeople first. They're thinking about just things that I'm surprised about. Even by a sales leader, I'm surprised, but also selling an enablement tool. It's really interesting how they're not first concerned about enabling their sellers. It's just not going to be successful at that company. That company is going to have problems if they're only thinking about themselves and their teams first. So I think really that trust has to be there. We talked about it earlier, but I can't stress it enough. If there's a CEO listening to this and their CMO and their CROs don't get along and aren't aligned, you should be really, really concerned on how your business is running. In this day and age, they have to be aligned.
We just had the sales enablement soiree a few weeks ago in San Francisco. 1,500 sales enablement professionals having discussions about how sales and marketing can unlock growth. One of the really interesting factors that came up was around your frontline sales managers. And so much of sales enablement is really targeted at the end seller, but the people that are doing the coaching of those sellers is the frontline manager. This person was probably an amazing salesperson, but how often do we take a step back across sales and marketing and ask the question, what are we doing to make those managers great coaches? How do we help them be at their best and enable them? And I think that's another opportunity to, again, make a huge impact on close no decision. Are you coaching and training your managers and doing the enablement so that they can then turn around and help the other sellers on their team? That's a big miss for most companies.
I want to expand on this one for just a moment here, because we talk about using the Highspot platform in this case to really bring marketing and sales alignment to the buying journey as well as to the seller's path, or we can call it the seller's journey, right? Recently, there was a situation that happened internally and someone made a referral. I tried to refer it over to our sales team. For whatever reasons, their emails kept getting blocked to the customer and only my emails were getting through. Nonetheless, the POC started working directly with me, and I told the sales team, I'll take it. I'll run the sales campaign. I love selling. I can't get me out of there. And so I asked the customer, I said, I hope you don't mind. I know I'm the CEO, but do you mind if I work the deal with you guys? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. What was interesting though is as I was going through the process, each call, every single time I interacted with them through an electronic message, as an example, I wanted to bring content to the table. And this is how we talk about here at Vengreso is our PVC sales methodology. And this is what we teach sellers to do is bring personalization and bring value and have a call to action. Well, what's the value? The value that a seller brings in the discussion is going to be namely through content. Could be third party, could be non-third party, but namely through content. So every single time you engage with that particular buyer, we as a selling team should be thinking about what piece of content should I or could I give that would help the buyer move the ball down the field every 5-10 yards, whatever it is. And I think that's a big missing element for this no decision is that our buyers could be overeducated or have too much information, or it could be too much of the wrong information or not enough information to be educated. And in all cases, if our marketing department is doing their job, they're going to be producing content at the awareness, consideration, and purchasing phase. If a seller is doing their job, they're going to be thinking about what piece of content should I bring to the table at the awareness, consideration, and purchasing phase. And that's where I love a platform like Highspot, because marketing gets to bring that right up front to a seller to be able to move them along and help them figure out what's the right piece of content to be able to engage with them. Jon?
Yeah, in fact, here at Highspot, we use both our sales enablement team as well as our own internal platform with a pretty granular and specific matrix. So we look at buyer persona. Are they above the line or below the line? We look at what industry vertical are they in and where exactly are they in the buyer's journey. And then the platform allows us to understand with science, what is that content that you're describing that actually moves that specific persona to the next stage. And if you don't have a platform that can help you do that systemically, you're missing out on the power of analytics and AI here.
Well, and you get the age-old problem where this is a real discussion point on Vengreso, where, as you know, we're content machines, right? And we were involved in a deal, and I asked the seller, as I was listening to their debrief on where they was at, I said, what piece of content did you send them? And they said, well, I didn't. And I said, but didn't you hear the podcast? And they were like, well, yeah, you just published that 2 days ago. And I'm like, and? But even if they hadn't listened to it, let's just pretend that they hadn't listened to it, technology can help fill that void where you may be churning out content every single day in your company, or even multiple pieces of content, white papers, ebooks, articles, webinars, whatever it might be, that I as a seller probably can't keep up, but I could do exactly what you just described, Jon. And that is I can go and say buyer persona, vertical, where are they at in the buyer's journey? Here's the topic of conversation. Boom. Here's my next piece of content, even without listening.
And again, I don't want to plug Highspot. I do love it near and dear to my heart. I've never worked for a company, and I would say it's our product, and there's other products out there where I get so many phone calls from buyers, and sometimes people that actually decided not to do anything, no decision, that say, this was the best customer journey I've ever had. Can I please steal your sales rep or give them a promotion? And it's because they knew what to do. They knew what to know, say, and show to that buyer, and they gave them a customer experience they were looking for. A story I tell about, Jon's and my relationship is right when Jon joined, there was an asset that I did not like that marketing was putting out there. It's like, why do we use this? Nobody wants it. He goes, let's go look and see how many people like it. So he pulled up the analytics that showed how many people looked at it, how often was downloaded, and it was our fourth best asset. But then we can have a conversation of us two not fighting about it. He can ask me, what do you want to change about it? And we can have this informed decision so we can help move something along in the sales cycle because I thought it should be changed. So being able to know when to use content is a big, big plus.
For all my listeners, these are two executives from Highspot, and we're talking about Highspot. But this, as you know, if you're listening to my podcast, I have been hammering on this particular element and the PVC. We even have a whole podcast all around the PVC sales methodology. And if you are not figuring out a way to help your sellers bring value, then you're failing as a sales leader. And you're failing as a marketing team. And there's oftentimes, Jon, I've talked with marketers galore, CMOs of your level, who will openly admit we have a problem with our content. Mostly, our content is around product-based information. It's product information. And we've got to change that for our sellers because, look, I am a digitally connected, mobile attached, social engaged, video hungry buyer. That's what I'm looking for. And I want that content in the formats that I'm looking for. And please, dear God, do not call me on the phone as a buyer because I will not answer your phone call. But if you give me a nice piece of content that has personalization, the value that solves a business problem that I am looking to solve right now, I will engage in a conversation with that particular seller. And oh, by the way, please give me a call to action to actually do something. That's another missing element. Bring me a call to action, which I think sometimes our marketing pieces, I don't know about you, Jon, but marketing pieces, webinars, white papers, ebooks, they got to have a call to action. Give me a closing page to do something here, would you? So that's a great discussion that we just talked about in terms of how can technology help or hinder this alignment. And that was one area. Was there something else that I didn't ask this question, but we started down this path of technology can help or hinder. Was there anything else that you think in terms of how can technology help or hinder alignment?
You also just need good old-fashioned grit. There is a point where you just need to pick up the phone. There is a point where you just need to get creative and other tools out there, a Highspot or a Gong. Everything's great, but there's a point where you also just need to be a good old-fashioned, good salesperson and do the hard work, get creative, figure out a way to open that door. Because I do think we're going to be crossing this chasm where there's going to be too much technology out there where salespeople aren't going to be individual. And you still need to have that.
That's a great point. Something that's funny, little small Vengreso, right? While we are the world's largest digital sales training company, educated over 140,000 professionals, if I look at our tech stack, we've got like 50 apps in the tech stack. Now, not all 50 of them are what sales are using. That's like sales and marketing and our customer success team. And I'm like spinning my wheels over this. And I'm like, good Lord, it's so much, right? But at the end of the day, something that's very important, you just mentioned, I subscribe to what we call the omni-channel. And that omni-channel is sometimes you just got to pick up the dang phone. Pick up the dang phone, people. And I think that's super important for us to be able to make sure we go back to basics on technology can help us, but good old-fashioned phone can help us considerably in terms of building relationships. I got one more question for you, gentlemen. Let's go through and talk about some of the specific steps that sales and marketing leaders can take to align on overcoming this no decision, this sales no decision. What are some steps that you think that we can take? Maybe it's wrapping up some of the things we talked about, maybe something new. What do you got?
Number one, make sure that sales and marketing are really talking about close no decision and what needs to change specifically. If it's just a high level, we need to generate more interest, it's not going to work. Bring it down to an individual persona or prospect who said, we're not going with you. Diagnose it, do a postmortem on it, go back to them and see if you can turn them around. Then you've got a recipe that you can rinse, wash, repeat. Two, have a content platform for sales enablement that helps you track, is it really working at scale? So you're empowering frontline managers, empowering the individual seller with analytics that work. And then three, I'd say join the conversation. There's a fantastic community out there called salesenablement.pro. It's sales enablement practitioners that work in between sales and marketing, having really rich discussions digitally online about close no decision and how to really make it an impact and a difference. Check it out, learn, be part of the conversation. Those are my three.
Matt?
I would say ditto. One other piece I would add is I think all those align the sales and marketing. I think one thing I would say for salespeople is also make sure you're aligned with the persona and person you're talking with. I think a lot of the times salespeople are so focused on making sure they're always up-leveling and getting to the most senior person, getting to the CEO, CMO, CRO, whoever it is, where they also just got to make sure they win that individual over and they're aligned with their personal goals, their strategy internally. And if they can get aligned with them, they're going to get credibility so they can keep on moving up that chain to overcome that no decision. Because probably a lot of times the senior level person is not saying the decision. They just couldn't overcome the objection of getting to that person because they weren't aligned with that individual.
Great suggestions. I'm going to go back to something that I have said many, many times before, and it was music to my ears, Jon, when you said this. This is exactly what I believe. Marketers market one to many. Salespeople are marketers. In fact, I think our title should be Smarketers. Why? Because we market one to one. So we do the exact same thing that marketing's doing, except we do it on a one-to-one basis, which means to all of you sales leaders out there, when was the last time that you read the blog, the white paper, the ebook, that you joined the webinar, that you personally extended an invitation to your peer level senior executive to join a webinar that the company's putting on? And I think if we think about some of those things in terms of specific steps that sales and marketing leaders can take, you took the marketing side, Jon, you took the sales side, Matt, I'm going to take the sales side as well. Most of our sellers have no clue what it is, that the content that we're publishing. And they have no idea how to align that content to the buyer persona. And while there is great technology out there like your platform that helps us do that, I as a seller still need to understand the context of this information so that I can actually talk to it while I'm having conversations. Because most of our buyers, they don't want to be able to be sold to, but they do want to be educated. And they do want to be brought along the journey. And that's what marketing, I think, does a really great job at, is helping our buyers move along the journey. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Can't agree more. You can have as much content. You can give all the guidance. You got to do the homework. You got to be educated. You have to become domain experts. You got to become product experts so you can inform the people you're talking with. So you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, and in the modern B2B space, somewhere between 70 and 80% of the buyer's journey is completed before they ever speak to a salesperson. So that seller has to become a trusted advisor quickly. If they know that content and can add value to the discussion, they're going to be able to move that deal forward.
Love it. Hey, guys, before I let you guys go here, I always ask all of my guests this final question. Oh, actually, two final questions. First off, if someone wants to connect with you guys, get a hold of you, what's the best way? Is it through LinkedIn, Twitter? What's the best way?
LinkedIn's the best.
Yeah, I'm a LinkedIn guy as well.
So we'll make sure in the show notes that we put both Matt Weil's and Jon Perera's LinkedIn URL inside the show notes. And when you reach out to connect with them, please, people, I've preached this 1,000 times. Make sure you tell Matt and Jon you heard them on this particular podcast.
And one thing to add, you asked one thing unique at the beginning. I'm one of the first 6,000 users on LinkedIn.
Oh, that is unique. Okay, there you are. So we have an avid LinkedIn user. I love it. And last question I got for both of you guys is your all-time favorite movie. All-time favorite movie. What is it?
I got to go with Fletch, hands down.
Fletch. All right, we'll take Fletch. Matt?
I'm going to go with the other one, Caddyshack.
There we go. We got Caddyshack and Fletch. All of y'all listening in, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't turn off this channel. Listen to this very important message. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me on today's podcast. Talk to you soon. Sales managers, before you go, does it feel like everything is a priority and everyone is asking for your time and attention? Here's a free video training that will help you manage your time, double your income, and will skyrocket your team's success. It's called the Sales Management Matrix. You'll learn exactly how to spend your time for the highest revenue return possible. Go to gong.io/matrix to get the free 19-minute video training. Again, that's gong.io/matrix. Go there now, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a rating and review on iTunes. I would appreciate it. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to themodernsellingpodcast.com. Hey, since you'll be on our site, be sure to check out our Modern Marketing Engine podcast hosted by my co-founder and CMO, Bernie Borges. Thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.